Hey guys, Aaron here. Today we're going to be replacing the steering angle sensor on a GM truck or SUV years 2007 through 2014. Now this particular vehicle is a 2010 Chevy Suburban 1500 with a 5.3, and we're experiencing a couple different issues. First of which is, as soon as we start the vehicle and turn the steering wheel, we get service to build track message and 3 codes pop up. As you can see, these are the codes right here, all pertaining to this one sensor. So I'm going to show you a quick little way that you can replace this sensor without entirely removing the steering column. So before we begin, let's go over the parts and tools we're going to need to get the job done. Alright, so we'll need a 13mm wrench, a 15mm wrench, a 15mm socket, a 10mm socket, a little extension for those sockets, a T25 Torx bit, and of course our brand new sensor. I'll go ahead and throw a link in the description of where you can purchase this sensor for a good price. Do yourself a favor, go with the OEM dealership part. I really do recommend going with the OEM part. I've had several aftermarket Dorman parts fail on me. Having to do the job over isn't too fun, so make sure again to check the link in the description for the part and a good price. Now before we begin tearing everything apart and disconnecting everything, there's 2 things I definitely recommend you do, and that's to tape the steering column in place using some painter's tape or duct tape or something like that. You basically want to tape this part of the steering wheel to the column right here. That way your spiral cable doesn't, or your clock spring doesn't break. If it does break, you'll end up having a multitude of codes on your dash and your buttons won't work right here. Next step is to remove the positive or negative terminal on the battery. We don't want the vehicle starting or even with the ignition on, so to prevent that from happening, let's go ahead and remove the positive cable. Alright, so with our steering wheel centered, taped up, and our battery disconnected, let's go ahead and start with a removal procedure for the sensor. We're going to go ahead and remove this panel. First thing we need to do is take the 2 Phillips head screws out of the bottom area right here. After that screw's out, next we need to take our 10mm socket and remove 1 screw right here. Alright, after that's complete, we can go ahead and remove this bar. There's 4 bolts or 4 nuts that hold it in using our 10mm socket with an extension. We're going to do that. And as you can see, with all of that removed out of the way, we have a lot better access to work on our sensor, which is located right here. The issue that we have is that this bracket right here is bolted to the steering column or the steering shaft, and it won't allow us to take our sensor and remove it. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen and take out this bolt that goes through the shaft, and then we're going to take out all 4 nuts. There's 1 here, 1 over there, and then up top there's 1 here, and then right over there. We're gonna leave 1 loose, that way it doesn't drop out completely, and when we're ready we'll take it out, and that way we could just move the shaft a couple inches this way so we could take our sensor and remove it and then replace it with a new unit without having to take the whole column out of the vehicle. So using our 15mm socket, let's go ahead and remove the nuts that hold the steering column in. Now let's go ahead and remove the bolt that goes through the steering shaft using a 13 and a 15mm wrench. Now that bolt's removed, let's go ahead and remove our last remaining nut on the column, and we can go ahead and drop this down and pull it out. That's all that's needed. Next thing you can do is remove the connector just by depressing the clip for the steering wheel sensor, and then what you're going to see are 2 little spacers. These spacers will fall down. They actually go onto the stud in between the column and the frame. Just make sure you put them back before you shove it back up there. Not sure if they're important, but GM put these there for a reason. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to remove this bracket right here. So we're just gonna take out our steering assembly very carefully. Just rotate it, and what we'll see are 3 bolts right here using a T25 Torx head. We're just going to take these out so we can remove this bracket. Just go ahead and slide that bracket down out of the way. Now we're ready to remove our steering wheel sensor. And finally, after that's all done, we're free to take our sensor and wiggle it down the shaft. It's just gonna take a little time of going kind of back and forth and getting it off. And as you can see, slowly but surely, it's coming off. So there we have it. So here we are on the bench with the old sensor compared with the new one. What you'll notice is that you have a spring on the new one. Whatever you do, do not remove this spring until this thing is in its little connector and snapped in 100%. What the spring does is that there's a rod that goes through it that keeps this thing perfectly centered and aligned. So again, don't remove this spring until you have it fully seated and installed. All right, now we're just gonna push firmly and listen for it to pop in. There you go, it's popped in. Ain't going nowhere. Now we can go ahead and pull our spring out. That's what that looks like. And we can begin to put this back together. Now that our bracket's on, the steering sensor is on, we can go ahead and start to put everything back in reverse procedure. Starting with putting the steering column back onto the steering shaft. Once you have your bolt in place, you can go ahead and put your little spacers back on. They simply just go on the stud before the mounting bracket. Now we can throw our little bracket back in. All right, so once you got everything plugged in and put back together, go ahead, reconnect your battery, take the tape off of your steering wheel and start it up. And as you can see, I'm turning the wheel and we're getting no fault whatsoever. So this repair has been confirmed. Make sure to check out the links in the description. Thanks for watching as always. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave something in the comment section. Thanks for watching as always. See you guys next time.